national interests tells the world that we're not serious about the nuclear threat. It says we're not serious about our responsibilities under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Now, I know my colleagues on both sides of the aisle agree that we should do everything in our power to make sure that Iran and North Korea and al-Qaeda do not have nuclear weapons. If we abdicate our position as a leader on nuclear arms control, then we risk losing the authority to build international consensus in stopping rogue nations and ending nuclear proliferation around the globe. Earlier this year, Brent Scowcroft, former National Security Advisor under President George H.W. Bush, testified to the Foreign Relations Committee that the principal result of non-ratification would be to throw the whole nuclear negotiating situation into a state of chaos. And that's a direct quote. It is much too dangerous to gamble with nuclear weapons or our national security at a time when we're working with our international partners to press Iran and North Korea on their nuclear weapons programs. In testimony before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, former Defense Secretary James Schlesinger said that a failure to ratify this treaty would, quote, have a detrimental effect on our ability to influence others with regard to particularly the non-proliferation issue. That sentiment was echoed by 5 former Republican Secretaries of State in an op-ed written for the Washington Post a couple of weeks ago. You know, one of the arguments we've heard on the floor this afternoon is that we're rushing consideration of this treaty. This is just not true.
Mr. President?
Senator from Massachusetts.
I would ask unanimous consent that there not show an interruption with respect to the senator from New Hampshire.
Does the senator from New Hampshire yield the floor?
I will.
I ask unanimous consent that the order to return to legislative session be delayed and occur at 7 p.m. with the order then for recognition of the majority leader still in effect.
Is there objection? Hearing no objection, so ordered.
I thank the senator.
Senator from New Hampshire may
Thank you,
resume.
Senator Kerry. I was talking about the concerns that have been raised about rushing this treaty. Well, this is just not true. This is an outline that shows how much time has been spent in the past as treaties have come to the floor. The fact is that the United States Senate has thoroughly considered the New START agreement. We've had plenty of time to review the treaty. Since it was signed in April, the treaty text has been available for everyone to read. It's not changed. We've had over 250 days to examine the treaty and ask questions of the administration. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee held 12 hearings on the treaty, and as you pointed out, there were another 9 held by other committees. In contrast, there were only 4 committee hearings held on the SORT Treaty and only 8 held on START II. The Foreign Relations Committee also accommodated some member concerns earlier this year by delaying a vote on the treaty during the August recess. And the Obama administration has answered over 900 questions, for the record, on New START. Nearly every major foreign policy or national security expert has weighed in on the treaty, either in testimony, briefings, or in. Now, the history of treaties like New START shows that the concern that there isn't enough time on the floor to consider this treaty just is not accurate. In general, arms control agreements take an average of 2 to 5 days of floor time. The original START treaty, which was much more complicated and complex, and the first of its kind, took only 5 days of floor debate. START II took 2 days of floor consideration. The most recent SORT treaty took 2 days of floor debate. So we've already had almost 2 days of floor debate. Other arms control agreements like the Conventional Forces in Europe Treaty and the Chemical Weapons Convention took 2 days of floor time. We have more than enough time to consider this treaty on the floor. And finally, some have expressed concerns that the Senate should not be forced to work so close to their holiday vacations. Well, I think it's important to repeat what retired Brigadier General John Adams said in response to that concern. He said, and I quote, "We have 150,000 U.S. warriors doing their job over Christmas and the New Year. The U.S. Senate should do its job and ratify this treaty." I couldn't agree more with Brigadier General Adams. The Senate should get its work done. We should ratify the New START treaty. We should do it before the holidays, before we go home in this session of Congress. It is time to vote on this critical national security concern. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Senator from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a delight to see you in the chair.